Margie here. Are you ready to learn about something that you can add into your life and practice that can significantly reduce your risk of falls and fractures? Well, if so, you are in the right place because today we're going to talk about something called dual tasking. And we're going to learn what you can do to practice this skill that will help you avoid distractions that can cause falls. And I'm really excited about our special guest, Dr. Mike Studer. And Mike has been a physical therapist since 1991, and he's board certified in neurologic physical therapy. He's an international speaker. He's the co founder and co owner of Spark Rehabilitation and Wellness in Bend, Oregon. He's an adjunct professor at Touro University. He's authored over 40 articles, 7 book chapters, and is the author of the most recent book that I absolutely love, The Brain That Chooses Itself: Personalized Strategies to Extend Your Health Span. He holds a trademark in dual task rehabilitation and has a patent pending on the same. And that's what we're going to talk about today, how we can add these incredible activities into our life that will help us prevent falls. So this is full of really actionable, great information. So stay tuned. Welcome back to the podcast, Mike. I'm so happy to have you here.
Hey, I'm pleased to be here again. Thanks for having me, Margie.
It's so funny because we met because of the spinal mid brace. I was introduced to you, but then when I heard everything else you did, I was like, Mike, you have to come back on. So since that time, I read your book, which your book, I have to give you a shout out. Your book, The Brain That Chooses Itself, is incredible. There's so many nuggets in that in terms of longevity and just things I think everybody could benefit from. And I teach a happiness class and I'm reading this. I'm like, oh my gosh, all the pieces you have in there and really doable strategies that can change people's lives. So I'm so grateful to you. And it's just an outstanding book. So you did a great job. And I'm sure I can only imagine all of, what all the feedback you're getting on how these things are changing lives. So kudos to
Margie, it's
you.
been received very well. It's been a life's passion to deliver that book. I wrote it in a very utilitarian manner for anyone, healthcare provider or otherwise, to be able to easily consume it. And you're exactly right. I'm receiving a lot of great feedback from people that say this is just life changing because it's easy to apply.
And the funniest thing to me is, so I'm going through the book, and then at the end, like, you didn't miss a beat. At the end, if you really just sort of skim the book, then at the end, you have it all summed up. If you didn't read everything, here's what you need to know. So you really, for anyone, even a person who just wants to read the last 5 pages, it's worthwhile. That's what I thought. I thought it was really good. And I just thought, as a physical therapist, you put all that in, all the exercise things and all these amazing pieces in, but then you put so much more in that really makes things stick and, how people can incorporate. So anyway, but on that note, today we're focusing on something that I don't think a lot of people know about, and that's called dual tasking. And this is really going to help everybody with balance and with not falling. I mean, the key thing here is, look, you can have a number on a DEXA, but yet that's not gonna change your life. What is gonna change your life if you don't have a fall and you don't have a fracture, because the majority of fractures happen from falls. So I don't think when people see their physicians, they make this point that we really wanna, fracture-proof our lives and do everything we can. So this dual tasking, I think, is a really important piece. We're gonna go into it in detail, but I have to just be honest in that, you know, I've been teaching balance as a physical therapist for over 40 years. And, I love Qigong and Tai Chi and standing on one leg and working with people throwing the ball, all sorts of things I've done. But I never, until recently, until I interviewed someone about Alzheimer's and learned that this is what they do for Alzheimer's patients. And I'm like, oh my God, this is something I need to incorporate into my community. And we have, but I think this is something, I was excited to hear how passionate you are, and this is something you do on a regular basis. So anyway, all that, let's talk about what is dual tasking.
So, one essential sentence to bring it all down is that dual tasking is really what happens throughout our daily lives. We move But our movement is in the background, isn't it, Margie? We don't think about our movement. We think about the room we're going into, the why we're going to a certain place, the conversation that we're engaged in, what we're listening to on our podcast, or what we're watching on TV. So the essential sentence is dual tasking helps individuals to put their movement in the background. And that actually is a trademark sentence that I have with the US Trademark Office, movement in the background, because that's really what brings the essence out. We want people to be able to move without devoting their thinking and their attention to their movement. And that's the goal of dual tasking with an individual that's practicing it at home, doing it in an exercise class, as you were describing it, or performing it in skilled physical or occupational therapy. We want your movement to be so robust that it can be performed in the background without your attention.
I love that because a lot of people are thinking and I tell people because, one of the big what I've always saw when people did sustain a fall or an injury, it was because they were multitasking. So they're crossing the street while they're on their cell phone, and that's, you hear about all these injuries happening because people are distracted. So why don't you explain the difference between being distracted versus, multitasking versus what we're talking about, dual tasking here?
That is an exceptional question. Okay. So now dual tasking is performing two, but only two activities that are separate. They have different purposes, different objectives. Okay. That's dual tasking. And the classic thing is we talk about, you know, chewing gum and walking, right? Well, you don't have to chew gum to be able to walk, and you don't have to be able to walk to chew gum. So they're separate. All right, let's put that aside for a second. That's dual tasking, right? Multitasking is, in fact, doing more than two activities at once. It's plate spinning. And when we're multitasking, we're not learning either one of the activities that we're participating in. We are shifting our attention back and forth and trying to manage attention. So we call that alternating attention, not divided attention. So multitasking keeps a person from being able to perform any of the tasks well, while dual tasking forces you to perform one of them automatically and one of them with your consciousness. So, whether you're doing dual tasking for your recovery or your rehabilitation, it's healthy, or just for you to maintain exceptional cognitive function, it's healthy. Multitasking is not healthy. It distracts people and keeps them from developing skill.
Thank you. That really explains it. So what do we do with this information? What's the best thing now that we know it can be beneficial? What do we do with this information on dual tasking?
There's so many things that you can do. So dual tasking can be one way to make an activity more engaging. Something that you feel like, well, I'm having a hard time getting on the stationary exercise bike or the elliptical at the gym or the treadmill or going out for a walk. You can use dual tasking to make the activity more engaging if you want. So, for example, maybe I write down a list of 7 grocery items that I know I want to get later on in the day. So I write that list down and I put it in my left pocket. I try to commit that list to memory. I go out for an aggressive walk while I'm iterating that list in my head. Can I keep something occupied in my mind while I'm also physically exerting? I come back, I grab another piece of paper, I try to write down the 7 grocery items that I think that I had committed to my memory. Now I compare the two lists. Did I get it right? So that's a way of being gameful, being playful, and actually being functionally productive and stimulating your cognitive skills while your motor was also operating. So it's very efficient. So that's one way to use dual tasking is just by being playful in that manner of a home activity you could be doing.
A few things in your book, you talk about that play, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, it gets away from a lot of us, but yet how therapeutic and how amazing in terms of longevity. You wanna just spend a couple minutes on
Oh
play?
my goodness.
'Cause
Yeah.
it's something that
So
most of us don't think, they don't really think about it. "Oh, yeah, that's a child's thing," or, but yet it's
exactly. Oh
yeah.
my gosh. Margie, you've got it exactly right. So In fact, if you were to just type in the word play on an internet browser search and then clicked on images, you're going to come up with 90 to 95% images that are going to be kids, because that's all we think about now, that kids are playful, but adults should not be playful. But what are the health attributes of play? Well, it lowers your cortisol, lowers your inflammation in your body, allows you to sleep more restfully, connects the two hemispheres of your brain, also cognitively stimulates you, improves your mental health scores, and we could go on and on. Play is a positive four-letter word that we have extricated from our lives, and we're starting to reintroduce it.
Yeah, I love that, and the fact that we can do it while we're dual tasking, how great is that? Now a question on that. So for someone who really has never practiced this, we wanna first practice at home in a safe environment before we go out on the street, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you know what, Margie, you bring a very good point to this. You can practice dual tasking and develop your resources just like you do weightlifting, just like you do endurance work, just like you do balance work or flexibility. It's a resource. Dual tasking has proven to be the most effective stimulator to improve someone's cognition. So if I'm concerned that I have mild cognitive impairment and I'm thinking that I don't recall things as well as I used to, or I'm experiencing what's known as the tip of the tongue phenomenon, it's not doing crossword puzzles, Sudoku, luminosity, or other types of brain games. When science has experienced those activities and actually studied those brain games against dual tasking always wins in terms of outcomes for cognition. But wait, I can also get better with my balance and my strength while I'm dual tasking. So it's efficient for time. It's actually the most effective for cognitive resources. And coming back to your point, you want to practice this as a resource to develop your capabilities rather than just throwing yourselves out there. You wouldn't go from couch to 5K, as they say, and say, I'm going to sign up for a race and I haven't been running for years. You would prepare your body to be able to face those environmental challenges. And really, we'll talk about this, but there's four main categories of distractions you can do that are very easy for people to insert into their lives.
Okay, we'll get to that in a minute. But I mean, that's how I really first learned about it from interviewing someone about Alzheimer's. We had a whole discussion, and that was one of the treatments. This type of exercise. There was a very specific exercise that they use, and they found it actually helps people, reduce dementia and improve their cognition. So it's so powerful. When I heard about that, I'm like, "Oh my goodness, this will absolutely." We know it helps with falls and fractures, which is just something we want to prevent, but, so as a physical therapist, here you are as a physical therapist. I don't know if it's something that when everybody goes to physical therapy for working on balance. I know years ago, at least when I was doing that, it wasn't in the forefront. So why do you think the
Right.
physical therapist is such an expert at this and it's so important in what we
It's a
do?
good question. So I've been invited as a speaker worldwide to talk about dual tasking. So every single state, all 50 states in person, five different continents, and I think 14 different countries now. And really, this has been a passion of mine since 1991 when I started to recognize the connection between cognition and motor skills. If we have to devote too much of our attention to our motor skills, they tend to degrade. We don't do as well with them. We start to find that we're fearful. We've got to watch and make sure that foot doesn't drag on the floor. And too much attention to a body part causes us problems. So I started to dive into this literature and found that it had some holes. And so I started to contribute to the literature since about 1991. Now, very salient to your question, we know that there are some top predictors of an individual's fall risk. Number one, have you fallen in the past? That's the number one predictor that you may be likely to fall again. That's you can't control that. If you already have had a fall, you can't erase that off of your record like a speeding ticket, right? The number two leading indicator that an individual is going to fall is that they're fearful of falling. That's number two. Number three is their inability to tolerate distractions. And number four is strength. So, in order, we have some controllables. We can actually improve our resources for dual tasking, which is why, to answer your question, I became passionate about this, is because it is a controllable feature of fall prevention. And we find that when people become more confident in their divided attention, they also drop their fear, which was the number two. And while you're doing dual tasking, you can improve your strength, which is number four. So you can take care of number two, three, four, all while dual tasking.
Yeah, I just love this, and it's something we can improve regardless of what age. It's just something that I don't think a lot of us put together. Like you said, most people are, "Oh, yes, I'm gonna do the crossword puzzles, or I'm gonna do all the different Wordles and all sorts of things to keep my mind sharp," not realizing that, yes, that's good, but that this, when you combine the 2, is even better. You wanna talk about the 4 distractions? Because
Sure.
live in a dis boy, do we live in a distracted world, and it's always so sad. And I remember my father-in-law had a terrible fall. Why? I mean, he's not alive anymore, but it was purely distraction. I see that so often. Someone will tell me, "Oh, they fractured their hip," or "This happened because," and once again, they were distracted. So, yeah, why don't you tell us about
Yeah.
distractions?
Yeah, it's very interesting. So first, let's answer the first part of your question, and let me say I'm sorry for your loss, losing your father, and with an accident being part of that, let's say, culmination of what perhaps started his downfall. We do understand that this is extremely important to be able to look at the science of dual tasking. So you asked, what are the four arenas or modes of dual tasking? Now, I've actually provided a figure that we'll be able to share in either the show notes or directly in the podcast, and we see that there are four different modes: cognitive, visual, auditory, and manual. Now, let's make clear sense of those. Cognitive is giving someone something to think about while they're also doing, right? So now that's the classic thinking and doing. And it's exactly what I expressed earlier. Can you commit that grocery list to memory while you are walking, balancing, brushing your teeth, etc.? All right. Now let's move to the next one. In no specific order, let's talk about visual. Visual means, can I move through an environment and also look through that environment safely? Can I identify visual features of that environment? Can I keep myself walking functionally while I'm looking for my keys, looking for my dog? So, can I commit enough cognitive resources to a visual scan of the world and also not lose any of my motor abilities in walking or dressing, whatever I'm combining it with? All right, let's move to number three. A manual distractor means I'm doing something with my hands and I'm also doing something else with my body. Now, the classic would be pulling a pair of glasses out of a purse or pocket, cleaning them off with a handkerchief or glasses, material, wipe, cloth, etc., while I'm still walking. Now, you'll notice individuals that have lost some of their capacities here, whenever they would do something like cleaning their glasses, like pulling their phone out, like adjusting buttons on a shirt, they would slow their walking down. Okay. And we're going to get to that in just a minute because that's an indicator that they might need more of this programming called a dual task cost. And then the fourth one is auditory. So that's the grandmother or grandfather walking next to their granddaughter who says, "Hold on, honey, I need to sit down while you're telling me your story about your day." Or they stop walking just in an effort to listen. It takes so much of their cognitive resources to walk that they can't walk and effectively listen at the same time. So you have the auditory distractor of you watch the individual just stop because they have to actually hear what you're saying. So cognitive, visual, manual, and auditory distractors.
Oh, wow, Mike, these are really great, and I'm sure people can relate to some of these, or at least other people. Now the questions so this is thank you so much for sharing the handout for with everybody. What does that handout have on it then?
So it actually has practical activities that an individual can use in their daily life or suggest to their therapist, suggest to a class leader, whether that be a personal trainer, even on a one-on-one basis. And they can look all the way down the matrix to be able to see, all right, I feel like I have particular difficulty in cognitive plus walking or visual plus a standing balance, so they can see where they are deficient and program accordingly.
This is fabulous. Thank you so much. So everyone's listening, we're dying. Okay, so we're not leaving you, letting you leave here without telling us some of the things we can do. So can you give us maybe one for each, like one of your favorites?
Sure, absolutely. I'm going to pull up the list right now and I'll be looking at that
Sure.
while I'm working with you here. All right.
That's good.
So,
People will then have a reference. They'll have a resource
yeah,
that they can refer back to. And then we'll have this in the show notes. We'll have the exact link of the PDF. And that's so nice of you. Thank you.
you're welcome. All right. So, what I'm going to do is actually pull up uh, cognitive, and I'm going to give you kind of a novel way to think about this. So, you could work with perhaps a loved one that you've got who has having some difficulty with divided attention, dual tasking, and you could go out on a walk with them and say, tell me as many pets as you can remember that you've owned in your life. Give me the name of that pet. So that would be a cognitive recalling information while we're doing a walk. That's a really fun one because you're actually having a formidable conversation, you're stimulating their memory, and you're also helping to automatize, make their walking more automatic, putting it in the background. Okay.
Great.
All right. So, how about another one? Let's do a manual distractor while someone who's a little bit more impaired is trying to keep their sitting balance. So, imagine someone sitting at the edge of a bed. They're capable of doing it, but they're working on their sitting balance while they're actually trying to, let's say, either get dressed, which would be a dual tasking, or potentially they're actually trying to maybe pour a cup of water from a pitcher that's over on their nightstand. So just keeping your sitting balance while you're doing something else with your hands would be another version.
Can you give us a harder one for people? Because a lot of people here are like really give us a harder one for the physical.
Okay, I'll give you a harder one. How about scanning an environment, maybe one that's familiar to you or new to you, and you're trying to give yourself really only 90 seconds to scan that environment for everything you can possibly see, and you're moving throughout the environment while you're doing that. So now you're trying to pick up visual information while you're moving through the environment. And you guys could do this as a small party group as well for some of your very fun loving listeners as well. And then at the end of 90 seconds, everybody sits down and tries to list as many things as they saw in the environment. So this is almost like having some sort of Pictionary type word game or a board game, but you're doing it and combining it with movement. And then, so there's a lot of fun ones in auditory. One of the easiest fun ones is just musical chairs. All right. So you're listening for the music to start or the music to stop, and you're taking your cue from that. Doing something like a Simon Says. Oh, but you weren't listening carefully. I didn't say Simon Says. So you could do that in a Tai Chi class, a yoga class, etc., for a very short playful element inside that class and say, you're only supposed to follow this instruction if I say Simon says. So that's a really fun one that a lot of people do. But I'll also give you one more in auditory because it's very compelling. And that is to say, I'm going to give you the instructions for where we're supposed to make turns while we're doing our walk. You then have to, while walking, listen to my instructions: left on 3rd Street, right on Front Street, left on Commercial Street, and have to commit those to memory and hold on to them. So that would be an example of auditory then as well. So there's so many good things. And you can just imagine a group of 5 or 6 ladies going out for a walk and challenging one another for some of these attributes so that the walk becomes even cognitively productive.
Hey, Margie here. High quality supplements are a big part of a comprehensive osteoporosis program. To help you, I offer a significant discount every day in my supplement store through FullScript. FullScript has the most extensive catalog of professional grade supplements and wellness products I've ever found. So all you need to do is go to tinyurl.com. That's tinyurl.com/supplements for less. And you'll get to my FullScript store. And in there, you'll see my favorite bone building supplements. So make sure to check it out. And the link will also be in the show notes. So let's get back to the show.
Wow, these are just so terrific. And what have you seen? You work with all sorts of people. Have you seen personally cognitive improvement from people who started doing these things?
So you see two things. Number one, you see individuals build their tolerance to distractions. Well, that should make a lot of sense, but we don't normally think about that. If you're a person who is not regularly exposed to distractions, you lose your ability to tolerate distractions. So again, what happens? If we don't use it, we lose it. You imagine individuals that live a fairly reclusive life, a fairly predictable life, a non-distracting life that's very structured. When they get distracted, things can fall apart very fast. So number one is people build tolerance up for distractions. Number two, you're exactly right. The number 2 and 3 things that happen together is I build my cognitive functions, reaction speeds, but whatever I dual tasked it with, walking, balancing, or otherwise, that improves as well. So here we have tolerance to distractions, and here we have the cognitive and the motor resources go up simultaneously.
That's exciting because a lot of people don't think they can even improve their cognition. And, how wonderful. It's so interesting though, for me, a person who really does a lot of mindful things. I meditate, and you too. I know from your book that we're very much on the same page. So there's two different realms here. There is when you're in solitude and when you want to eat mindfully and you don't want to have a zill, but that's
Mm,
multitasking. So,
that's right.
that's more multitasking as we
Yeah.
describe. Versus, but when we're meditating, we really do just wanna focus on one thing and have that ability, but
Yes.
don't wanna lose our ability because the world has distractions in it, and so I think it's just such an important point, but yet counterintuitive, I think, to a lot of am I right about that? That to a lot of us,
Yes.
we're trying to the world is so noisy and so much distraction, we're trying to be more mindful, so why are we practicing distraction? So I think it's
Hmm.
important point to see all these benefits with dual tasking that you've mentioned and that there's activities that we can do to really make a difference in terms of
Yeah.
combining
And if for
movement.
no other reason, we are just creating a more resilient version of ourselves. That's why we're doing this, so that we can be resilient and tolerate that distracting world. That's why we're doing it. The mindfulness, the meditative, the appreciation of awe, that brings body systems down, brings heart rate variability more in line, brings our resting heart rate down, reduces cortisol and inflammation. Very healthy. But you're exactly right. It's juxtaposed because here we're actually making ourselves resilient to a challenging world. It's like strength training. If you don't get yourself strong enough, you won't be able to do this. If you don't have enough dual task tolerance, you won't thrive in this environment.
Yeah, and I think the key is it's not like you have to always do it. If you're in the woods and you're just enjoying the moment and just, you don't have to dual task, but you have to have that ability so that you can have a conversation while you're enjoying the magnificence and not
Yeah.
fall.
Yeah. You know what? You bring up an excellent point intentionally there. As a matter of fact, is that dual tasking lends itself to do something we talk about in my book. And in behavioral economics, we call it habit stacking. And habit stacking is very efficient. It means, well, I'm already going to commit time to brushing my teeth. What else could I be doing while I'm brushing my teeth? Well, dual tasking is an easy thing that goes on top of that. So you could be brushing your teeth and balancing, right? Or you could be brushing your teeth and actually thinking about the appointments that you've got later on in the day, or what your daughter just told you about your granddaughter. So you can be rehearsing these types of things. And so you're exactly right, Margie. You don't always have to be doing it, and you can do it without committing extra time in your life to doing it.
Yeah, the funny thing is, as physical therapists, we've had to figure this out because our patients do not do the exercise program. The truth is, right? You tell them, I want you to exercise 3 times a day, or I want you to, people even changing their breathing. The first thing I always tell people with stress is before you eat, stop and take some nice deep breaths because everybody's eating. So it's tied in. And they've done research on this that just like you said, when you tie something into something you're already doing, a person will do it, where if you said 3 times a day, take some nice deep breaths, wouldn't work. So that's such a good point. Well, I love this. I'm so excited that you're sharing this handout to get people started on this and thinking about this, not to take it to the extreme. As you said, you have to start with where you're at, start in a safe place so that, you don't get distracted and fall. That's not our intent. But and that's going to be so helpful for people. So thank you so much about that. While you're here, though, I have to chat about a few more things in your book.
Yes.
Okay, so there's something that you said that I couldn't believe. Do you want to talk about it? For every Let's see, I wrote it down. With every minute of physical act, why don't you talk about that? You know the sentence I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
and largely this comes out of the work from Stamatakis and colleagues in what we've studied called vigorous intermittent lifestyle physical activity. And that sounds like a mouthful, may sounding confusing, but it's very simple. Throughout our lives, things that we were already going to do, there's benefit in adding some intensity to that. You're going to walk your dog, push your grandchild in a stroller. You're going to get up and walk throughout your home or sit to stand. Any one of those activities, just committing a small number of seconds, as small as 20 seconds, to moving briskly or moving repetitively in an intense manner is vigorous, intermittent lifestyle. You were already going to do it, physical activity. You don't even have to call it exercise. And what do you get from that? Study after study says it very clearly. People that move with intensity regularly throughout their lives, even small doses of intensity, for every minute that you spend in intensity, you save yourselves 4 to 7 minutes of lifespan. It's a 1 to 4 or as much as a 1 to 7 ratio of lifespan. So that means over the course of your life, if you could spend a year in physical activity that's intense, not actually all that difficult because it adds up over 30, 40 years, 1 year of that saves you 4 to 7 years of your life. It's powerful.
It's so amazing, and I think I just think people don't realize. I think people know, especially this crew, people who do care about their bones, they know how important physical activity is. And I've been talking about it forever. But that statistic was really quite something. And it's not going to the gym. This is just adding on to things that you're already doing. I mean, I think that's what I loved so much about your book was that Simple things like that. And also, you wanna talk about just novel things? Because I think people don't realize sometimes as we get older, we sort of like routine, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
"Okay, I know I'm doing," and I know I'm doing this at certain time, and I'm going here, and I'm going here, and that's all fine and good, but there's real benefit to novelty. You wanna talk about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Margie, thanks so much for bringing that up. So, chapter 6 in the book talks about extreme experiences or novel experiences. You can think about it any way you want. And when you consider the title of the book, The Brain That Chooses Itself, it's very important to understand that we have to choose our own novel or extreme experiences because we don't want somebody to push us out onto a stage with 1,000 people in the audience and say, speak about this topic if that's something that we don't choose. So, the power of novel or extreme experiences when we choose them includes mental health, inflammation, digestive health, psychological health, cognitive performance, and also our ability to be able to handle unexpected stressors that come up in our lives later. Now, let's talk about what novel or extreme experiences could be because there's several different categories that people can choose from. And remember, I'm using that term choice and choose very, very intentionally. So you could have thermal experiences, meaning if your doctor says it's okay for you to use a hot tub or a sauna or jacuzzi, committing yourself to 20 minutes of submerged in a hot tub at 104 actually imitates many of the same principles and properties that aerobic exercise does because you have to dissipate heat out of your body, elevate your heart rate, and inflammation goes down. So it's going to be hot. It's going to be challenging. I'm going to try to do it. Mental health is gained from that as well. Now, the reverse of that in thermal extremes is also what we talk about is ice plunges and cold baths and swimming in, waters off the coast of Norway. Well, you don't have to do that. The research has actually now said ending your shower with 30 seconds as cold as you can stand it that feels uncomfortable. If you choose that, it actually elevates your level of alertness, cerebral blood flow, and cognition throughout the day. So thermal, but we also clearly understand one category of extreme experiences would be exertion. So I'm pushing my body to work hard. You have cognitive. I'm going to try to learn something new, relearn an instrument, learn 10 more words in a new language. That would be difficult or novel. And then the final one would be psychological. I'm going to do something that causes me to feel a little bit uncomfortable, not fearful, not never unsafe, but causes me to do something a little bit uncomfortable. I'm going to speak to someone I haven't spoken to. I'm going to try to tell a joke out loud to people. I'm going to try to do a post on Instagram or Facebook, and I feel a little bit uncomfortable with that. Novel experiences elevate your health in a systematic and systemic manner.
I have to say, and I'm curious what your opinion is. So, where I work at, my health club, they put a cold plunge in. They turned one of the hot tubs to a cold plunge. Oh my goodness. I swim. I love it. I've never felt so great in my life. So energized. I do both. I do the hot tub. I first do the cold plunge hot tub, always
Yeah,
end with something cold and then go in a cold shower.
that's right.
But
Yeah.
does the research have, is there a certain amount that they found, or is there anything?
The
'Cause I know.
research
Yeah.
plays that out entirely and exactly in the fashion that you're talking about. Hot, cold, hot, back to cold. Try to end on cold. All right. Here's the science on that.
Okay,
Your
great.
cognitive performance goes up for 4 more hours after you exit the cold. Your immune system becomes healthier. Your inflammation in your body goes down. Remember, inflammation, if that sounds confusing to people, the one and only one thing that connects all of the top 8 killers in all countries in the world is inflammation. So that's autoimmune diseases, cancers, cardiovascular diseases, diabetes. All of the top 8 killers are connected by inflammation. Inflammation goes down when we subject ourselves to that alternating contrast, hot, cold, or just end with cold. The other nice thing about cold is it is actually an exceptional recovery tool that helps an individual after they've engaged in aerobic exercise. So, really, the sustained endurance exercise, you walked on the treadmill, you're afraid you're going to be sore tomorrow and can't go to your grandson's graduation, use the cold. You recover fast, your performance rebounds quickly after cold. Those would be 4 easy things that you get from that.
Yeah, it's just so invigorating, I can't get over it. Is there anyone that shouldn't do that, though, for people listening?
It's a good question. So some individuals that cannot feel the cold as well, particularly if you have Raynaud's syndrome, and your fingers or your toes turn white in spontaneous episodes throughout your lives, then seek more medical consultation. If you have had significant cardiovascular disease and the cold would feel like a rush or a shock to your system, check with your doctor to make sure you'd be okay with that. And remember, one easy thing to do is to ease your way into that so that you can build tolerance. I'm just going to go knees. I'm just going to go to thighs, just going to go to waistline, and you can build tolerance for that as well.
Oh, I love that. Well, we could talk on and on. I mean, you have so many, anyone who's interested, your book is really fantastic. And you did something very nice that you wrote to me. And I just want to make sure that you had, because we have a lot of people listening. So you said if people want why don't you tell everyone a signed copy, what they need to do? That was very
Yeah,
cool.
as a matter of fact, we'll have my email address in the show notes. I am willing to actually take all of your listeners and give them a signed copy of my book at a less than, let's say, a lower price than it's actually sold on Amazon. So $10 plus shipping for a signed copy. And if you want to have the signed copy personalized, say to my grandchildren or to Bobby, and you want me to write a note in there, I will personally sign it, send it out, $10 plus shipping, which is less than you can get it for on Amazon.
Okay, we'll put it in the show notes. You can say it too if you want to say what your email is.
Yep. My email is very simply just my name. It's mike@mikestuder.com. And remember, Studer is just like the car Studebaker, Studer. So it's mike@mikestuder.com. You send me your email, your mailing address, who you want me to make the book out to, and I will get a book off to you in the mail. I go on a regular basis to the post office to send copies out, and I'm happy to add your listeners to this special offer, though.
Very nice. So you have to realize I have a lot of listeners. Oh,
I'm willing.
you're willing. Okay. And then the link. So we'll have a special link then to get your book at that price. Is that what we'll have?
Actually, they'll just need to send me an email. You don't have to link to anything or order it anywhere. Just send me an email with your information.
Oh, okay. So they don't pay
Yeah.
for it beforehand or anything? Do they pay for it?
I can figure out what payment form works for them because I take everything. PayPal, Zelle, Venmo. If people want to do checks, it doesn't matter to me. I try to make it easy. The only thing I can't do is take a credit card.
Okay, well, that's very, very kind of you. And yeah, I have to say, I have the book 2 ways because I have so many books that I end up getting the book on Kindle, and I also do the audiobook because I find that so helpful. So you speak though. The audiobook actually has that must have taken forever. You recording your own book, which is so interesting. For me, it's
Yeah.
because I'm in the car a lot or I'm doing things, and so I just, can listen to the audiobook. So it's
We started recording the audiobook in late December and we wrapped it up in early April. So, not that I was working on it constantly, but there are hundreds of hours in the audiobook to get the pronunciation right, to get the inflections correct. It is very important to me to be audible, to be clear, and to read it with passion. So we committed ourselves to a quality product.
Yeah, and there's such a difference to me when the author, the person that wrote it, reads it because you feel it, you understand. Where if you have someone else read it, maybe they have a good voice, but you can always, to me, it's always such a, it's always a real perk and really makes a big difference. So you did it.
Thank you. It was a fun project.
Yeah, yeah. So
Thank
before
you.
all right, so everybody, you're gonna have to start dual tasking after you hear this. I just think it's so important, and, I have some things too that I'll put in the show notes, but I just think this is something that we need to add because we don't wanna fall. And we don't wanna fracture, and that's, to me, no matter not everybody can do strength training. I'm a huge believer in it, but everybody can do balance. Everybody can do some of these things, and it's really going to make a difference. And if we can prevent a fracture, that is huge. That's what everything we do with our supplements, with our nutrition, with our mindfulness, with our stress reduction, like all the whole integrated program. The end of the day, we want to be vibrant and healthy, and having a fracture is just what we want to avoid. So I think this is really, really wonderful. But is there anything you want to end with or anything else you want to share that we missed?
Margie, I don't think we missed anything, but I think it's healthy to reiterate for your very intelligent listeners that a simple exercise snack that they might want to try right after they get off of listening this or while they're listening to it is they could just do 10 sit to stands and try to see if they can name as many cars that they have driven in their lives while they're doing their sit to stand. So here comes your strength training and your cognitive training. And that's just an easy thing to do.
I love that because 'cause you're safe in your house, and that's a good one. I don't know if I can think of all my cars, all my station wagons, all my from way back, I the first car I ever had was a disaster, then I had hand-me-down cars, I had a
It's a good exercise, isn't it? That's
I
good.
had a Chevette, the most unsafe car that probably ever existed, a Chevy. It was like the
Yeah.
tiniest little thing, but in those days, it was what I could afford, so anyway, yeah, that's great. Oh, well, Mike, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure. I'm so glad that we met because you were introduced to me because of the spinal mid-brace, and I love the book. I love what you're sharing with the world, and, hope to stay in touch. And thank you for creating that really wonderful handout and your kind offer as well. So thank you so much.
Margie, my pleasure. Thanks so much for what you're doing in helping the community out there that are your listeners and beyond.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Mike as much as I did, and now have a better understanding of dual tasking and how we can add these activities into our day, and it'll really make a difference. That's what we're trying to do, fracture proof our bones, and this is something I think we should all add. So all the links Mike talked about will be in the show notes. And I also want to tell you about something. A while ago, when after I interviewed Heather Sanderson, and she had told me how this was helping her patients with cognitive issues and Alzheimer's and dementia, I said, I have to find out, how I can incorporate this type of exercise. And so she had given me the name, and through doing research, I found an amazing woman. Her name's Cami Dennis, who's been a fitness in this industry for over 30 years and been teaching this type of cognitive motor type of exercises. So I had her do 2 classes. The first class was so incredible that everybody loved it and asked for her to come back. So she did 2 classes with the community, and every month I have a $22 class, or it's part of my membership. But anyway, for those people that are interested in having a whole class on activities you can do using your mind and body in a safe, at home, I have them. And what I'm going to do, they were each $22, but I'm going to put them together. So for $22, you can get both of them. So I will put that in the show notes as well, because it really talks about all the things that Mike talked about, and it's a class you can just follow along with. But so we all loved it, and it was very helpful. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with anyone you think can benefit. And please subscribe, because as I learned, the algorithms are such that when more people subscribe, the podcast goes to more people. So it's a great way to spread this information. So thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.